California, you drive across the start-finish line, headed down into turn 1, 205, 210 miles an hour. They've got that TRD radar trap up there. Try not to look at that. And as you drive down into turn 1, you have to decide which lane you're going to run. You can run right up by the fence, which is a lot smoother and sometimes faster. You can run down the bottom. It's a shorter distance, but there are a lot of bumps. As you unwind the wheel and push the throttle down off at turn 2, there are a set of bumps right there before you get to the wall. The car really shakes loose. It's a tough corner. And then you scream down the back straightaway into turn 3, and turn 3 presents a number of options. You can run as low as the apron down in turn 3. You can run across that white line. The banking goes away, but sometimes there's some grip down there. You can run up by the fence, but the biggest thing to remember coming out of turns 3 and 4 is that the straightaway isn't a straightaway. It opens up to a big curved front stretch, so you can get the throttle a little earlier than you could off of turn 2. You just scream back to the start-finish line and hope it worked.
So getting into turn 1 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, it's really wide, and it almost feels like you fall down a couple of stories getting into the corner. It's a little bump getting into turn 1, so it's really important to get to the bottom as quick as you can. If you're on fresh tires, you can hug the white line just around the exit of turn 2 and really throttle up hard. The back straightaway appears long, but when you're running 200 miles an hour, you're into turn 3 before you know it. Drive into turn 3 really hard. Get to the bottom again. It's very important to get your left side tires all the way to that white line. Sometimes you even touch the apron just a little bit, and that helps rotate the car, and then you start throttling up for corner exit. And as your tires get older and older, this is always a problem spot. You tend to spin the rear tires and lose grip on exit of turn 4, and then you go through the tri-oval, and that's a quick lap around Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Green flag lap at Bristol. It goes by very quick, obviously, but when you get into turn 1, you have to use a fair amount of brake, since it's obviously a pretty small track. So a fair amount of brake, and your preferred line is going to be up pretty close to the wall, about a half a car off the wall or so, we'll say, and depending on the rubber buildup. And you let it kind of drift up in the middle of the corner, and you do a little bit of a diamond off the corner. So you drift up, and you're off the throttle, and then you hammer the throttle down in the center of the corner, kind of get it pointed straight for the exit of the corner. And you have a little short back straightaway, and then turns 3 and 4 is actually a little bit easier to get your car turning through. So you drive into 3, same deal, let it kind of, you use a little bit of brake, not too hard, carry your momentum, let it drift up the racetrack, and get it pointed. And as soon as that thing's pointed, you can hammer the throttle down, and then you're pointed at the start-finish line.
So a lap around Charlotte Motor Speedway, going through the first dog leg on the front straightaway, let the car drift out to the wall, arc it in over the hump, the car gets light, and then you have to have it pointed right, so when you land, there's some big bumps right there. When you land down there in turn 1, the car load up, you got to make sure you have it pointed right there. And then exit of 2 is pretty easy. Low as you can keep it on the bottom, a lot of grip down there near the paint. Up off of 2, down the back stretch. Coming to turn 3, you got to lift early going into turn 3. Big arc, not a lot of brake, and try to get in the gas early and drive down the hill so you can get a good exit off of turn 4, because it gets real flat out there by the wall. It's real easy to run into the fence off turn 4. So out to the wall off turn 4, back through the dog leg, back to the start-finish line. That's a lap of Charlotte Motor Speedway.
At Chicagoland, when you go down the front straightaway, you're looking into a very sharp high bank into turn 1. You want to hold it as low as possible, but on older tires, you can actually move up the racetrack and gain some time. The biggest thing is getting to the gas early off of turn 2. That'll carry you down that back straightaway with a lot of speed. Into turn 3, the middle line is typically the fastest. It's the smoothest, so you want to get in that middle line as quick as possible, get back to the gas so you can complete a fast lap at Chicago. Cross the start-finish line at Darlington to take your lap. This is one of the most intimidating first corners that you'll ever see in NASCAR. It's very narrow. You actually want to use the apron getting onto turn 1 to help the car turn. As you get on the apron into turn 1, you gather a lot of banking, drive the car straight up to the wall, and hold it at that point. You want to run about 3/4 throttle through the middle and pull the car down as low as you can on exit. That'll help you get around the car in front of you. Down the back straightaway, you got to be thinking letting off early and using a lot of brake into turn 3. I typically like to run a little bit higher on the entry of 3 to allow the front tires to take a breath, so it turns really good off of turn 4, and that'll complete you a great lap. Around Daytona, you're going to be wide open, but it's really about the cars that are around you. Those who manipulate the air the best are going to wind up winning the race. So look around your surroundings, get a draft off the car in front of you, and the most important thing is side drafting. That'll pull back the car that you're next to. Is what I did off of turn 4 in the Daytona 500 and got us the victory.
So Dover's one of the fastest tracks in the circuit, really. So you come across the start-finish line, and way before that, you're already thinking about the next corners. The straightaways are relatively short. You drive big downhill into the corner, so you get set up for turn 1. You get ready to drive downhill, get loaded up into banking. You try to hit the bottom early. Typically, you'll go up a little bit in the middle of the corner and then try to hit the bottom on the X of the corner. You try to make the corner sort of like a triangle and carry as much throttle as you can off the next corner, leading to the next straightaway. So you get down the backstretch, get into turn 3. Turn 3 is about twice as rough as turn 1. The entry's a lot trickier. It's a lot looser typically getting in that corner, so you got to try to roll into that corner a little bit more shallow, and then try to drive it the same way as you do turn 1 and turn 2. Get off turn 4, drive back up the hill, and get ready to do it again.
Coming to the start-finish line, starting a lap at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it's really narrow. It's narrow down the straightaways, it's narrow through the corners, so there's not a whole lot of room in which you're going to look around for different grooves in order to pass those guys around you. So going down the front straightaway, getting into turn 1, kind of want to roll out of the gas real smooth, get it turned down to the bottom real smooth, get it down to the white line and next to the grass, and then you're going to throttle up real hard and get it a good exit off of turn 1 coming up for the short chute. Short chute, you let it drift out to the wall, be next to the wall, and get a nice smooth clean arc down into turn 2 and get it again all the way down to the grass, all the way down that white line, making sure you get a good straight shot up off of turn 2. Clear that outside wall because it'll come up a little bit quick, but you want to make sure you get as much momentum as you can down that long back straightaway. Getting into turn 3, it's going to be the same thing as turn 1. You're just going to kind of roll out of the throttle real easy. You're going to kind of turn it to the bottom of the racetrack, get it down to the grass. There's a couple bumps down there in turn 3. Shouldn't upset your car too much. If it does, you got to make sure that you work on it or try to go around those bumps, and then let it drift out to the outside wall for the short chute. And as you enter into turn 4, same thing as turn 2. You want to take just a little bit wider arc and a little bit deeper arc into the corners, but have a straight shot up off that corner. That wall will really come up on you quick, kind of narrow off the exit of turn 4, and that's your lap back down to the start-finish line at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
So Kansas, since they repaved it a few years ago, they did variable banking. So there's 3 distinct grooves at Kansas. The bottom is the flattest, the middle goes up a couple degrees, and top goes up a couple more degrees. So typically when you're by yourself at Kansas, you'll come across the start-finish line, you'll try to arc it really wide getting into turn 1 and try to get to the bottom, to the white line. That's the fastest way around when you're on new tires or when you're qualifying. Turn 1, pretty forgiving, a lot of banking. It really squashes the car down into the track. You come off turn 2 and start heading down the backstretch. Turn 3 is a totally different entry than turn 1. It's very sharp. Typically you get really loose into that corner. Typically you got to cheat the car in a little bit and enter much narrower than you would in turn 1. So you try to get down and get to the line, and in turn 3 you slow that entry down. You lift earlier for that corner, but you get into throttle much earlier because it being a trial over the wall goes away from you off of turn 4. Carry as much speed as you can off turn 4. Get back to the start-finish line and get ready to do it again. So Kentucky, roughest track on the circuit, most character of any track that we go to. The start-finish line is so rough, it just bottoms the car out and shakes your headrest all over. Tough to even see across there. And then the groove has always been just off the bottom there. You could run the bottom if you have to try to get around somebody, but typically just up one groove right above that first seam, left side tires above that first seam, is always the most amount of grip. So you go into turn 1, carry a lot of momentum, in the gas early, drive in real hard, a lot of speed off there. But then turn 3 comes up, and that's one of the trickiest turn 3s in the circuit. It's the easiest one to overdrive. You have good speed off of turn 2, and you really got to overslow the car getting into turn 3. So for me, my biggest challenge in Kentucky is to let off the gas early enough and slow up early enough for turn 3. It doesn't feel normal. You have to slow up so much, and then also you get in the gas that much earlier than you would. That's the most unique thing to me, is how much you have to overslow the car into turn 3 and how early you're in the gas to get off at turn 4 and get down the front stretch.
Las Vegas Motor Speedway being a D-shaped oval, you're going to have a little bit of turn at the start-finish line that you're going to have to navigate. let the car kind of drift up to the outside wall before you enter into turn one. A lot of bumps into turn one, gets kind of choppy, gets kind of rough as you land into the corner and you get into the banking in turn one. And from there, you want to be able to get it to the bottom of the racetrack if you can. Otherwise, the middle is not going to be too bad. This place is pretty wide. It's got some good racing grooves in it. You're going to throttle up hard and early, and you're going to try to let the thing just kind of drift out to the outside wall, nice and smooth up off of turn two, and head on down to Nella straightaway. As you get down the straightaway, you're going to enter turn three. Turn three is going to be a little bit of a sharper corner because you don't quite have that same arc as you do into turn one. So you're going to try to turn it in there a little bit sooner, and you're going to get it to the bottom. You're going to wrap the bottom of the corner a little bit through the centers of turns 3 and 4, and make sure that you stay a little bit lower off the exit of turn 4, because it seems like that wall off of 4 comes up a little bit quicker than it does in turn 2. And then you get back to the start-finish line. That's a lap at Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
Michigan's a fresh repave. It's a very smooth racetrack. It looks deceptively wide. It's pretty narrow. You drive down into turn 1 at Michigan, and if you go too low, the banking flattens out. So you want to really run right in the middle of the racetrack where the banking first picks up, but you're still making the shortest radius you can. You try to hang a little bit of throttle. Don't just dump the throttle and get the thing loose. You want to drive it really smoothly off the throttle, really smoothly on the throttle. And turn 2, you come off of turn 2 with a ton of speed. It flattens out, and you've got to really watch the wall not to run into it. Turn 3 at Michigan's the toughest corner. You drive into turn 3, and the track turns before the banking picks up. So the car is very flat. It's not pushed into the racetrack. It's easy to get really loose there and slide. That has ruined a lot of people's days. So be careful into turn 3 and through the middle of 3 and 4. It's one of those tracks a lot like California. You stand on the throttle, and the straightaway opens up for you. You get a little more room on exit than you thought you maybe had. It's a fast place. Phoenix is one of the most unique racetracks on the circuit. There are really 3 corners at Phoenix, definitely 2 distinct ones. You drive into turn 1, it's a very sharp corner, it's high banked. The car, you have to brake very hard into the corner, release the brakes, and hope you're not too loose. It's a really tough corner to get down to the bottom where you need to be. Once you get down there, you feed a ton of throttle, the banking picks way up, and the back straightaway opens up. It's very wide, so you've got some room out there. Then when you come down to the kink in the middle of the back straightaway, you have to decide if you want to stay up on the racetrack, or if a guy's in front of you and you've got a little run, you can run all the way across the apron, but it kills the bottom of your race car. It just slams the car through those transitions. Then you drive into turn 3. It's a very fast corner entry. It's really flat. It's a little bit treacherous. You got to be careful not to overdrive it and back it into the fence. Once you get to the center of 3, it's patience. It's pushing the throttle and being patient and getting as much speed as you can before you lay it wide open onto the front straightaway.
Pocono is a very unique racetrack, and to take a lap around there, we'll start-finish line very long front straightaway going towards turn 1. You're usually in high gear by the time you cross the start-finish line, so we'll pull high gear, 4th gear, all the way down the front stretch. Coming to the braking zone, you'll see a 3-2-1. Usually the 1 cone's a pretty good spot to brake. Just try to stay out and arc it into 1 as much as possible, but yeah, remember, we're going to have to downshift. We're downshifting there now, so about as much as you can arc and get down in there without getting the thing loose when you downshift. And then right back in the gas early, right around the bottom, turns 1 and 2. Pretty wide, sweeping, a lot of room out off of turn 2, so you can be in the gas a long time. Carry 3rd as far as possible, about 9,400. Shift into high gear coming towards the tunnel turn, and probably the scariest turn in all of racing is the tunnel turn, because you got to go in there, 90-degree corner, not a lot of banking, and you're talking 200 miles an hour. So try to let off a little early. Again, try to hit, just really important to hit your marks. Get the entry turned in the right spot, get your apex at the right spot, and back in the gas wide open before the apex of that turn is the key to getting through there. Coming down to turn 3, really flat corner, sort of like a New Hampshire or a Milwaukee type corner. Let off early, your car's really going to try to get loose going in there. But again, right around the bottom, down to 3rd gear. And really important to carry speed off of that corner to make lap time. And then back to high gear, come to the start-finish line. That's a lap at Pocono.
Martinsville is one of the most technical racetracks that you go to. There's times when you go into turn 1, really early, you have to let off the gas and use a lot of brake. I typically like to keep it as tight around the curb as possible. That's typically your fastest line. But it's those guys who get to the gas a little bit quicker that's going to get you off of turn 2 and down that back straightaway with the best speed. Once again, into turn 3, you're going a little bit downhill, so you got to be aware not to wheel hop into turn 3. Keep it as close to the curb as possible, get back to the gas, and get to the start-finish line.
Yeah, I think Loudon, to start a lap there, track's really, really flat. So taking a lap there, going into turn 1, the car's always loose there. There's a lot of bumps, a lot of transition going into turn 1. So you got the front tires bouncing a little bit as you're trying to turn in. The back of the car's light. It's doing everything you don't want it to do. You got too much wheel on it. It's trying to push. The back is bouncing loose. So getting the entry speed there is so critical because you have no banking to hold the car. And like I said, you got those little swells and dips you're going through, so it's trying to slide. And if you miss your marks in the center of the corner by a few inches, you're going to hit that seam and you're going to be way slow. So hitting your marks is the key at New Hampshire. Even if you have to back up your entry, even if you have to slow down a little bit going into 1, hitting those marks in the center is key. And then roll the center, try to get the thing cut, point it off of turn 2 so you can get in the gas without getting loose. That's another thing that's tough about it. Going down into 3, into the back straightaway, there's some really big bumps in the braking zone that'll screw your car up and make you miss your marks as well. But as far as the center of the corner there, a little bit easier to hit your marks. The track almost feels wider in turns 3 and 4. And off of turn 4, typically you're probably the tightest of any spot on the racetrack. And then back to the start-finish line.
Richmond is one of the most fun racetracks on the circuit. It's a small track. It's a short track. You can really race hard there, but it's big enough that you get the real sensation of speed. You drive down into turn 1 at Richmond, and it's deceptive. The radius just gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and so you have all of this speed, and you're braking. I can't tell you how many times I've overdrove the entry into turn 1. You got to get down there, get the car slowed down, get off the brakes, try to touch the throttle all the way around the center, and then this turn 2, as you come off at Richmond, off of turn 2, the banking falls away, but there's still some corner left, so the car is going to slide up to the wall, and you have to be really careful not to smack the fence off of 2. Turn 3 at Richmond is pretty flat and pretty fast, so it's easy to overdrive. The car will slide down there, the banking will catch the car, and at that point you have to be ready to push that throttle. Turn 4 opens up onto the front straightaway, and you should have no problem keeping the throttle down there.
And the most important part is just trying to minimize wheel spin. So you're coming around the front stretch, turning it up the hill to turn 1 to the left. Because you're going uphill and you got some banking there, so that's probably one of the fastest feeling parts of the racetrack. Car's bottoming out, hitting the racetrack a little bit there. That's a good sign. That means you're getting your car down low enough where it needs to be. But carrying it up the hill to the left around turn 1, down to second gear, sometimes first, depending on the transmission. You have to play with those gears to get off of turn 1 properly. Off of turn 1, a little short shoot, downhill left. Really fun little corner. The car really loads up. Then up the hill to the right. That's probably one of the most difficult turns on the track. Over the hill, blind corner, you can't see the exit, so it's real easy to get off the racetrack there, get your left side tires over on the curb too far, and lose time. Down the hill braking into turn 4, very important corner, 90 degrees, over the curb, out over the curb again, where we almost hit the wall and the styrofoam block on the other side. It's a really fun turn. You can be aggressive on the exit, but you have to watch the entry. If you get in there too hard, you'll slide over both those curves and lose all your time. Next corner is a real sharp one, real flat, no banking. Right-hander, really got to get the thing slowed down. First gear, almost as slow as turn 11, or maybe a little bit slower. Turn in there, get around the curb, and get in the drive off of there to get up to speed up through the S's is very critical. Lots of time lost here. First gear exit is really hard to get the tires to hook up and not spin them. So up through the gears, coming into the S's, it's a lot of speed there if you can get up to speed right. S is pretty straightforward, just real smooth, trying to flow around the curbs, use a little bit of curb but not too much. And then the next go through the S is pretty simple. Coming around turn 9, coming to turn 10, very difficult turn. You want to get the thing pointed, come around 9, get it slowed down, get your braking and your downshifting done, going straight before you turn into 10, because it's a very fast corner, very loose spot on the track, real easy to get off in the dirt there. Come to turn 11, another really difficult corner all the way down to first gear. right around the curb, and again, hard to get that drive off turn 11 without spinning the wheels. So as much throttle as you can stand without wheel spin, and then up through the gears, come back to the start-finish line.
So Talladega, the fastest and largest track on the NASCAR circuit. You cross the start-finish line, and you're almost to turn one. The start-finish line is way down the front straightaway, so you drive into turn one, a lot of banking, and you just pick your lane, depending on your favorite drafting partner. If they're running the bottom, maybe the middle, if you're trying to make a pass, you can really move around. There's really no ideal perfect line through the turns at Talladega. So you roll through turns 1 and 2, you're in the banking, you feel the G's compressing your body into the seat, and then you look at this real long back straightaway. It feels like it's a mile long, and so you have a lot of options. If you get a really good run on exit of turn 2, you can pull to the bottom and try to pass the guy in front of you. You can, fake high, go low, or fake low and go high, but remember, stay above that yellow line because you can't pass below the yellow line at Talladega. You drive into turn 3, and again, your car really compresses into the banking. You can feel the vertical G's on your body when you get into that, I think, 30 plus degrees of banking. And so you round off through 3 and 4, and you've got a long front straightaway that's a tri-oval. And so sometimes the tri-oval can be a very vulnerable spot. That's where your car is the lightest. So don't be too aggressive through the tri-oval, or you can get wrecked pretty easy. And then you still have a few hundred yards before the start-finish line. So if you're going to make that last lap pass, now's the time to do it.
Texas is what we like to call the quad oval. So as you're at the start-finish line, you're kind of straight, but yet you're still bending. You're still doing a turn down the front straightaway. You got to go through that first kink and get yourself kind of out to the outside wall before you enter turn 1. As you enter turn 1, it's a real quick transition into the banking. Kind of tosses you in there. Place is really wide. It's got a lot of options, but more times than not, it's just right around the bottom. The bottom's the fastest way around. As you get towards the center of the corner, there's a really big bump going over the tunnel that may or may not upset the race car depending on how it's kind of set up, but more times than not, you'll definitely feel that bump. As you exit turn 2, the track kind of falls away from you, so there's not a lot of banking to hold you into the racetrack, so it kind of gets a little bit of a four-wheel drift off the exit of turn 2. That wall kind of comes up a little bit quick off the exit of turn 2 because you don't have a whole lot of room and you don't have a whole lot of banking in order to hold the car. So once you get out to the outside wall down the back stretch, you're going to be looking at turn 3. Turn 3 seems like it's a long entry period. You've got a long time when you start turning the wheel. It's a really slow turn. It's a really long turn, kind of getting down to the bottom of the racetrack. Again, the bottom's the fastest way around. There's going to be some bumps kind of in the center of 3 and 4 and towards the center of turn 4 that you'll have to navigate. Those bumps may or may not upset the car. Sometimes it makes the car want to be a little bit tight through there and kind of push out towards the outside wall a little bit quicker than you would like it to. But the banking holds up a little bit longer off of turn 4, so you don't necessarily have to worry too much about the outside wall at the exit of turn 4. Coming back towards the start-finish line, navigate that second kink, and you'll be right back at a lap at Texas Motor Speedway. Heading down the front straightaway at Watkins Glen, you're out to the left side of the grass and getting down towards the braking zone. Typically, you're going to brake pretty early. It's a fast straightaway, but yet it's a really sharp corner. As you head downhill, getting into turn 1, you want to turn it off towards the bottom of the racetrack. Kind of a 90-degree corner, a little bit of banking in there, but the downhill is what wants to mess you up getting into that corner. As you get down towards the bottom of the center of turn 1, you want to gas it up real hard and get a good shot up off of turn 1. Back out to the left side of the racetrack and get yourself set up nicely for turn 2. Turn 2 are what we call the S's. Up the hill, you're going to have a right-hander and then a left-hander and then another long sweeping right-hander. That's turns 2, 3, and 4. And entering turn 2, sweep it right down to the bottom of the racetrack. Stay tight as you can to the right side of the track and getting yourself set up for turn 3. Turn 3, you want to arc off into the corner and get to the left side of the track and just kind of let it drift. You'll let the car drift through turn 3 and out back towards the guardrail on the right-hand side. And turn 4, you'll corner turn 4 all the way around, turn 4 all the way on the inside. It's a long sweeping corner. Should be wide open from about the center of turn 2 all the way around, all the way to the bus stop. So going down that long back straightaway, a lot of speed there, 180 miles an hour plus. And you're going to have to brake pretty early with all that speed carrying into the bus stop. So probably the 500 or 600 marker is where the braking periods are. Get the thing slowed down. It's a really, really tight entry, not a whole lot of room there. Hard to go side by side into the bus stop. But you're going to turn into the bus stop to the right first. You're going to go through 2 lefts, and then you're going to turn right out of the bus stop. and just making sure you cut all the corners as close as you can without getting into the grass. That's kind of the biggest thing in making up time through the bus stop at Watkins Glen. You come out of the bus stop and you go in through the carousel. It's a long sweeping right-hand corner, almost 180-degree corner that you got to go back and go the other direction. It's got a little bit of banking, and it's not too bad where you get some good speed kind of developed on the exit of the corner, but the exit of the corner will get a little bit slick because you'll want to slide out. The rear of the car will want to fishtail out a little bit towards the left side of the track, but you want to keep that under control, get a good shot down the straightaway, and getting yourself set up for what we call turn 10. Turn 10 is a tight little left-hander. You're going to brake right at the crossover bridge, braking marker number 200 or 300, I believe. And it's a tight 90-degree left-hand turn, not a lot of banking there, really slick. Car wants to be tight through there, wants to push a little bit, get to the outside of the right side of the racetrack on exit a little too quick, and then you got to bring it back to the left side of the track and get yourself set up for turn 11. Turn 11, you don't have a whole lot of speed going through there, you're not doing any shifting, you're just trying to set up your marks and get yourself ready to go for the right-hand corner, the final right-hand corner that leads you onto the main straightaway at Watkins Glen. Coming up to the start-finish line to take your lap, you're going to be right up against the outside wall going down the front straightaway. Looking off into turn 1 and seeing how wide the racetrack is. There's a lot of options that you have at Homestead to be able to run from the bottom of the racetrack all the way to the wall. So for me, it's anywhere in between. Essentially trying to run the middle top is kind of the fastest way around that place. There's kind of some seams that you got to look out for sometimes, but not too many bumps. The place is actually really, really smooth. Getting up and building your momentum through turns 1 and 2, kind of on the high side there, get you a good run down the back straightaway, and getting down into turn 3, looking at the same kind of thing. Looks like you got a really wide corner, kind of opens up, but the track's a little slick down in 3 and 4, more so than 1 and 2. So you got to be careful with that, and seeing that if your throttle on time is going to be just as good as 1 and 2, you're going to have a really fast car. Coming off turn 4, sweeping out to the outside wall, got plenty of room over there, and back to the start-finish line.